Mr. Chairman, we're live.
Okay, the Corporations Committee will come to order. Could you please call roll?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Lily Crago. Lily is a sophomore at the University of Wyoming. She has a double major of ag communication, and political science. And Lily will be calling the roll today.
All right, welcome, Lily.
Thank you. Representative Brown,
Present.
Representative Locke,
Present.
Representative Heft,
Here.
Representative Johnson,
Present.
Representative Lucas,
Present.
Representative Webb, Representative Weber,
Excused.
Representative Yin,
Here.
Chairman Knapp.
Here.
Chairman, you have 8 present and 1 excused. You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we're in a little uncharted waters here today, but I know Matt will lead me through this by the nose. So we are looking at Senate File 98. And we have, I would consider a motion for reconsideration of the bill as a whole. Please. Okay. Representative Lucas, and second by Minority Leader Yin. Okay. And what we're doing, there was some confusion when we left Wednesday as to one of the amendments. And so let's go ahead and clear that one up first. And if you could just explain, Matt, what we're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we have here is when we left the meeting on Wednesday and we attempted to make the revisions to the bill that we would then turn into the legal staff to mark up the bill, reflecting the amendments for consideration on the floor. We were a little unsure of the intent of 2 of the 3 amendments that were considered on Wednesday and ultimately adopted. The first amendment really was to make it clear that the amendment that was submitted by the County Clerks Association, it had included community college trustees. And so the intent was to make the bill strictly applicable to school district trustees. And so the amendment that we had on Wednesday effectively removed community college trustees from the bill. That was very clear. I don't think there's any dispute there or a question on intent. The 2 others essentially took school trustees as they appear on election ballots, and because there would be a designation of party affiliation behind their names as they appear on the ballot, there was a question as to whether that would move those individuals from a nonpartisan ballot to a partisan ballot. And so that was part of the amendment. That was 2 of the 3 amendments that was considered on Wednesday, effectively removing school district trustees from the nonpartisan ballot and placing them on the partisan ballot. When we were considering the write-up Wednesday afternoon, we just were a little unsure of the intent of the bill drafters, if that was their intent. And so I was hoping for some clarification on that. Regardless of, I just want to make sure that we have the intent correct. It will still go to the legal staff or the House, and they of course will consider it in terms of legality, authority, constitutionality, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to remove the amendment, or can we just amend to replace?
Mr. Chairman, in a conversation that I had with the House legal staff yesterday, they indicated that it would be best if we made an amendment to essentially reverse the amendment on Wednesday essentially taking the bill back to where it was on Wednesday, and then we could make amendments to strike community college trustees from the bill. And then if we have some indication of what the intent was on the ballot issue, whether it's partisan or nonpartisan, make another amendment for that. And at that point, we would have addressed everything, at least that the county clerks submitted in terms of an amendment. I also wanted to just indicate, and Mr. Chairman, you would probably do this as well, that the Secretary of State's office had some thoughts on the bill in terms of timing for individuals that change party affiliations and when that can occur and when it cannot occur. But that would be entirely separate from this cleanup, if you will, from Wednesday.
All right, thank you. So committee, at this time, I would entertain a motion to reverse the amendment from Wednesday. Representative, or Vice Chairman Locke with the motion and Representative Heft with the second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, and now, Senator Olson, if I could have you come up and just confirm your intent on the listing of the nonpartisan partisan issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I understand correctly where we're at, let me just say this, what the intent, the bill was intended to impact a general election only, to the only change that the bill tries to introduce is that a party affiliation has to appear next to the name of the candidate running for school board. I wasn't aware of the issue until the clerks brought it forward, but there is an issue in how the ballot is styled. I think this committee can do what it wants with that. If the committee wants to move the names of the school board trustees from underneath the header nonpartisan elections and put them elsewhere on the ballot, which I think is my understanding of what the amendment actually does. I don't have any issue with that at all. I think that probably makes it more clear for a voter, to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any questions from the committee? Minority Leader Ian.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I miss you, Senator. So you have this 2-page thing? Okay, so the first page I think I understand, so maybe, Mr. Chairman, it would be good to bring the clerks up to try to interpret.
Okay, if the clerks could join us, please. Okay, questions from committee?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So, Ms. Langford and Ms. Freeze, Clerk Freeze. So, one, I think we're gonna have to have a separate application form now for school versus community college trustee if we don't wanna have a partisan community college trustee. So I think that will have to change the amendment. But two, on the second page of your handout where it says order of offices and ballot propositions or nonpartisan ballots, I think we still would need if we want them to be on the nonpartisan ballot primary, we would still need them to be on this list, or am I mistaken?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Freeze.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Yin, so I would agree with you that this, the application does say also for community college, so you're correct. I think we'd have to have one for them and one for the school trustees, and then on the second page, yes, you would leave in the community college trustees because it's under the order of ballots and ballot propositions for nonpartisan ballots, so that would be correct.
All right, any other questions? All right. So seeing that, would you like to make an amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll make an amendment. It'll be kind of tough. So, 22-6-117 AIX. So that's the bottom section of page 1 of the amendment. We will take the clerk's amendment of adding school board trustees. So that part. And then for the top part of the page, the 22-22-202, we'll have to create another subsection B that, or whatever the next section letter would be, and conform. That would be specific for school trustee. And then we wouldn't have the new language in A. And then we'd actually strike school or in the parts of the A part. Does that make sense to everybody? Does that make sense to you, Matthew? Matt?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Yen, yes, it does. I've already drafted those two separate application paragraphs.
Great. Yeah, so that, I mean, that would be my motion. And then we don't touch the second page.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Representative Weber? Any discussion? Yes, Vice Chairman.
Sorry, I'm just trying to be clear. So on the second page, you say we don't touch the second page. So do we need to unstrike the community college, for lack of a better term? Do we not change the community college, but do we still need to strike the school board trustee? That's the piece of this I thought was part of it. I'm just asking for clarification on that.
So, Mr. Chairman, my concern with taking the amendment from the second page is that the nonpartisan ballot so if we're talking about the primary ballot, it still needs to have the school board trustees because we're not putting this on the partisan ballot. Is that not correct? Okay. Could we have the clerks chime in?
Ms. Freeze?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Yen, sorry. So correct. So on 22-6-125, it should read, this first one for candidates for community college does need to stay there, and then VIII would be candidates for school board trustees should be deleted because they're no longer on the nonpartisan, only the college.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. If it's friendly to my second, let's add that in. If we need to fix it on the floor, we can figure it out.
Second, okay. All right. So you have this drafted as stated?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I do.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then if we could have the Secretary of State come up and talk to us about your amendment on the timeline, or the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate this opportunity to put forward this amendment. And this is a separate issue, but since it was being reopened, we thought it was a good opportunity to go ahead and handle this issue. Essentially, this amendment, which is the page 2, line 1 amendment after, quote, candidate is affiliated. Essentially, this amendment is trying to place some sideboards to account for both the party affiliation lockout period before the primary election, as well as the interaction between the candidate filing deadline for school board candidates under 22-22-202A, which is between 90 and 70 days before the general election, and the lockout period during the primary election. So to illustrate this, and I thought we'd give a couple examples. In 2024, the deadline to file an application for school board candidacy began on August 7th, 90 days before the 2024 general election, and ended on August 26th, 70 days before the 2024 general election. The 2024 primary was on August 20th. And so what you have, and in 2024 it was a 6-day period, you have this period where candidate filing spans a period both before the primary and after the primary, and then after the primary, a period where the lockout has elapsed and ended. And so that's something we're trying to fix here. During that lockout period before the primary, you cannot change your party affiliation, but after the primary, you can. So without this amendment, you're treating candidates differently based on if they file before or after the filing. So this amendment clarifies that if you were registered to vote during the lockout period, which begins on the first day before candidate filing for the primary election, I think May, then your affiliation should reflect that. If you were not registered, because that's one caveat, say somebody registers the day they fill out the form to apply for school board, then your affiliation is reflective of your affiliation when you file your application. So that's what we're doing with this. Reading the amendment, we did have 2 other small changes, but I'm glad we're working it out here rather than the floor. After, quote, candidate is affiliated, insert, quote, if the candidate was registered to vote during the period for which party changes are prohibited as specified in Wyoming Statute 22-5-214A, and we added the A just to make the reference clear. I think on the version you're looking at, maybe the A is not there, but maybe we got the corrected one distributed. But again, in the same year, the affiliation required by the subsection shall be the party that the candidate was affiliated during that time period. If the candidate was not registered to vote during the period for which party changes are prohibited, as specified in 22-5-214A in the same year, the affiliation shall be the party affiliation as of the time the candidate files the application for election, as required by 22-22-202. So that first sentence is effectuating the situation when you are registered during the lockout period, and the second sentence is the other caveats. So again, from the version that we sent to LSO, or that was sent to them last evening, we did make 2 small changes. In the second line, we changed it to for which from, what was it before? In which? Before which. So the before became for. It's a little clearer. And then we changed the reference to 22-5-214, and we added the A,
All right.
just to be very clear.
And our version does contain that. right?
Okay,
Everybody's does.
good.
so.
All right, thank you.
All right, questions for the
So we
secretary?
support the bill, 100%.
No? All right. Okay, with those changes, unless anybody in the public has any comment on those changes? All right, we will close public testimony. Oh, we do have one comment, I guess.
Oh, I thought it said there's a question.
Nope. Just getting a comment from the public here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Marguerite Herman, just briefly on my own behalf, that I would resist this provision in that a person registering any other time for office registers as the party. They are registers as a candidate for the party they are currently in as of that day. And so I would suggest that after the blackout period ends, and people are allowed to re-register, update a registration with the change in party, or take away the party, become an affiliated, that should remain an option to the candidate, so that on the day of filing for an office, the party that's recorded on the document is the party of registration for that day. I don't see why it has to carry over from a previous period. If the period for changing a party is in effect, as Mr. Secretary mentioned there, for that 6-day period, what was an example for last year, that should be open and available to the candidate, him or herself. I don't see any reason to lock them into some previous registration. I think that is overly restrictive. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think procedurally, I probably shouldn't open that up to public comment, but thank you for the comments. That's right. All right. Committee, what's your pleasure? Yeah, still on that amendment. Do I have a motion for the amendment from the Secretary of State's office on the timeline? Representative Brown? And Representative Weber with the second. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That amendment carries. All right, any other amendments? All right, we will have a roll call vote on the added amendments and the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a roll call vote on Senate File 98, School Board Trustees, Party Affiliation. Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Heft, Representative Johnson,
Aye.
Representative Lucas,
Aye.
Representative Webb,
No.
Representative Weber,
Aye.
Representative Yin,
No.
Chairman Knapp.
Aye.
Chairman, you have 7 ayes, 2 noes.
With your approval, Senate File 98 does pass the committee. Senator Olson, we apologize for the confusion there, but your bill is so nice, we approved it twice. All right, next up, we left off on Senate File 127. And we did have some public comment on it already, but if there's any agencies in the room that wish to comment on this? Go ahead and introduce yourself, Mr. Rubio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Rubino. I'm the Policy Director and Counsel with the Secretary of State's Office. Just wanted to share a couple of thoughts on both the engrossed version of Senate File 126, as well as the amendments that were provided to the committee at the last meeting. Senator Boner was kind enough to share those with us. You'll note, I believe the committee's been provided the fiscal analysis that was conducted by our office. Originally, as the bill was drafted, we anticipated several changes and modifications. As the committee knows, the Secretary of State acts as the registrar of all agency administrative rules. They're filed with our office both initially for public notice and comment, as well as when the final rules packets are uploaded. And after that, then there is a statutory mechanism whereby they're submitted to LSO and the AG for review, and a final LSO analysis that's sent to Management Council to make their recommendation to the governor. The engrossed version, we believe, did away with all of the modifications that would need to be required from our end to the administrative rules system itself. When the amendments that were brought by Senator Boner at the last meeting, we were reviewing those, and our understanding of the bill as it stands right now, we spoke with Senator Boner prior to this meeting, is that is still an analysis of flagging an agency rule as a major agency rule that is performed by LSO and LSO staff, and that is made public through the WyoLedge website. All of the agency rules, as well as the rules analyses that are currently provided by LSO, those are posted on LSO's website. And so our understanding, and I believe that the intent of the amendment and the engrossed version, is that we no longer have any necessitated changes to our administrative rules system. And so we're no longer asking for any appropriation to account for those modifications. So happy to answer any questions, but as of right now, that is our understanding of the bill, is that with the amendment, those flags for a major agency rule, those are made public by LSO and not the Secretary of State's office.
Questions from the committee? Okay, thank you. All right, next up, we'll hear from LSO. If you can step up and introduce yourself, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Matt Obrecht, Director of LSO. I had a small cleanup amendment to Senate File 127. Talked to Senator Boner about it first and thought I'd bring it to you for your consideration. Mr. Chairman, it is amendment proposed Senate File 127-0701. Mr. Chairman, first there's just some additions into the bill title, requiring a study and a report, and then authorizing additional positions, which are actually already in the bill. There's nothing new there. It just wasn't in the bill title. The bulk of this amendment is changing from where we say chief economist of the LSO, just changing it to the Legislative Service Office. The only LSO employee that's in statute currently is the director. No one else is named in statute. We've got a chief economist, actually. It's Don Richards. If this bill passes, Don won't do these agency economic analysis. That'll be assigned probably to Mr. Petrie and his team. So that's the bulk of the changes, Mr. Chairman. The other large change is on page 2 of the amendment. And as you're aware, we've got a management audit committee, statutory committee, and we have not done a management audit in the legislature, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. It had been incredibly difficult to staff, and there'd been an increased demand for budget fiscal services. And so with Management Council's authorization, we'd repurposed those positions to budget fiscal and also some to legal. With that, I tried to get the Management Audit Committee to decide what they wanted to do with themselves a couple years ago. Whether they wanted to do that with consultants, and they kind of just punted at the time, decided not to do anything. Mr. Chairman, if this bill goes into effect, I think this could be an area, that the legislature obviously is making a priority out of this sort of economic analysis for agency rules. It should really have a home committee, and Management Audit Committee wouldn't be a bad committee for that. And I can just tell you, Mr. Chairman, right now, in the legislative rule review process, LSO is kind of out there on an island. And it's fine. I mean, but we don't really have a lot of support from legislators. Management Council gets the report on all the rules. They only take action if we say that there's a problem with those rules. And most of the time, when we find problems with it, we're able to resolve those issues with the executive branch agency or with the governor's office before Management Council's even involved. So I do think that if the legislature wants to make a commitment in this area, that a home committee to hear that would be a good step forward. And right now, all management audit would do with this is do a study of what that would look like. Also, how this new law would mesh with our existing rule review process, because this is kind of just laid on top of that process. They don't really, in the bill itself, there's not any cohesion right now between those two processes, and that's fine. We've got a delayed effective date. We've got a year to figure it out. So anyways, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions. That's the amendment, though.
And having been a sitting member of Management Audit, I promise we'll get it together. All right, any questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, committee, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other comments from the public to this bill? Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jeff Doherty. I'm appearing today on behalf of FGA Action. Thank you for the opportunity to spend Valentine's Day with this body. I want to take just a second, and I'll be very brief, I think 3 minutes, Mr. Chairman. Urge you to support this bill. I wanted to point out that according to my research, about 70,000 regulatory requirements burden Wyomingites. That's a lot of regulation out there. And I want to point out that each time we adopt a regulation, there's a cost that goes along with that. There's a cost for the state in that you now need somebody to administer that rule or that obligation. But there's also a cost for the applicant in terms of compliance, having to complete school, training, whatever it is. But there's probably going to be an application cost on the top of it. So I think this bill allowing you to more thoughtfully make sure that rules are compliant with the legislative intent of actions taken by this body is definitely a step in the right direction. You know, I think about a couple of examples. One of them is Senator Hutchings' hair braiding bill, Senate File 113, I believe is the number on that. I can, with some level of certainty, assure this body that I don't think the legislature ever acted to put significant regulatory requirements on people who want to braid hair. And so I look at the amount of time and effort and money that this body has spent trying to roll that back a little bit, and I think this bill creates a much more efficient way for that to happen. A couple other things I'll touch on quickly. One, for example, is the building codes. So building codes are generally adopted for life safety purposes, and they do a really great job, but recently we're seeing more of a move into other areas that extend beyond life safety. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's an example. Take, for example, energy codes. There are a lot of people who are pushing to have the state fire marshal adopt energy codes. That adds a significant cost to housing. We know that people are struggling to find housing, and the problem is, once the state fire marshal adopts it, that becomes the code minimum. Now, jurisdictions can go ahead and adopt those energy codes if they like to. They can add them to the code, but my point is I think this is a good opportunity for this body to look at things like the codes to make sure that they're compliant with the regulatory intent and that they're actually allowing people to be housed. I'm going to skip a couple of other examples in the name of brevity and just point out that this bill, I think, is going to be useful in terms of reducing the regulatory footprint. I think it's going to translate into cost savings for both the public and the state as you winnow through those regulations that this body may determine to not be necessary. It's going to give you more oversight. And by the way, it doesn't prevent agencies from enacting rules that are necessary to implement the will of the legislature. One last example that I'll point out, just because it's kind of fun. Cosmetologists, for example, in the state of Wyoming are required to have 2,000 hours training. Now, this body doesn't determine what the FAA does, but the other side of my example is a commercial pilot needs 250 hours. Now, my wife would tell you that it's vital that they have a lot of training so her hair isn't ruined. But my point is 2,000 hours really necessary when in the state next to us, kids can get to work with much fewer hours? So, Mr. Chairman, in the sake of brevity, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to stop my comments there, and I'm happy to answer any questions this body may have. Thank you for your time.
All right. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, okay. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the room for this bill? Go ahead and come up. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Knapp. I know I already testified, so I'm not going to rehash our testimony from Wednesday. My name is Kit Wentland, Special Counsel, Tribal Relations Policy Advisor to Governor Gordon. Just wanted to hit 2 points. I definitely don't want to step on LSO's toes. We do work well with Director Obrecht and his staff. I personally am the one that reads all the rules that go through, and if there's technical issues, I usually get personal reach outs, and most of them we do fix before they end up even in front of Management Council. The only thing that I'd like to note is just, we do have I would encourage the committee to really understand, and I'm happy to provide any clarity on how our current rules process works. This is a delegated authority with a lot of checks and balances, and while there's probably times where there's hiccups, I'm very confident in saying agencies try very hard and are mandated legally to only promulgate rules as specifically they're given authority by the legislature and statute. So if there's a rule and there's an issue, it's probably because there's a statute mandating they do rules. Outside of that, I would just encourage the committee to not add more on top of what is already about a 160-day to year-long process or more, depending on rule complexity, because there's already a lot of steps for public input, for individual citizen challenges, and for legislative challenge if there's disagreements with the executive branch. With that, I'd stand for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. All right. Is there anybody online for testimony?
Mr. Chairman, no, there is not.
Okay, we have one more. Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Richard Garrett, and I was born in Wyoming. I'm a citizen of Cheyenne, and as a citizen of Cheyenne, I have the unique opportunity, perhaps, to attend many legislative committee meetings, both during the session and during the interim. I'm also professionally aware of the work that many of the state agencies do to make sure that their actions comply with legislative intent. What I'm trying to describe is I know we have some tremendous people working in state government. I know that you understand that as well. And I'm only asking that we all acknowledge the work that they do. And while we also acknowledge that regulatory reduction is a long-standing value and one that we should always seek to achieve in Wyoming. Regulatory Reduction Task Force has taken a look at a lot of the regulations that are in force in our state. I think there was testimony that we, in terms of the number of words in our body of regulations in Wyoming, have the second fewest in the nation, second only in terms of fewest to the state to our northwest. I think that's a tremendous achievement. I applaud legislative oversight. Director Obrecht talked about Management Audit Committee, and Chairman Knapp, you know the work of that committee very well. And perhaps it's time to reinvigorate that committee's work too. So again, as somebody that is fascinated with the legislative process and admires the work that you all do, I promise I'll be around in the summer if you have meetings in Cheyenne, and do the best that I can to contribute in a meaningful way without burdening you with a lot of useless words. So with that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would agree with your comments. Anybody from the committee, questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, with that, I will close public testimony. Committee, we do have amendment recommendation from LSO if somebody wants to move that. Minority Leader Yin. And second? Representative Weber. Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That amendment does carry. Are there any other amendments? All right, seeing none, we are voting. Oh, I'm sorry. Minority Leader Yin.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a little bit of discussion. Apologies, Senator, I didn't really hear your presentation of the bill, but, as someone who has sat on Management Council and has reviewed some of the rules, it's odd to have to put this on the legislative branch instead of the executive branch. So probably going to vote no. I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to having economic analyses done, but I don't think that it is the legislature's role to do that. It could be something that we ask the executive branch to do. So I'll vote no on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr.
Rep-
Chairman,
Yes.
Just for clarity, I think you've got two proposed amendments. One was from Senator Boner. Did you already take action on that amendment? And that's the one that's proposed Senate File 127S0204.
204.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we do. I apologize. We do have amendments proposed also from Senator Boner. Does somebody want to move those amendments? No, I don't. I don't believe we have, but, okay. Moved by Representative Weber, seconded by Representative Lucas. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That amendment does carry as well. Okay, any other amendments? With that, we will take roll call on Senate File 127, Administrative Rules and Legislative Review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a roll call vote for Senate File 127, Administrative Rules, Legislative Review. Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Heft,
Aye.
Representative Johnson,
Aye.
Representative Lucas,
Aye.
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Representative Weber, Representative Yin,
No.
Chairman Knapp.
Aye. With that, Senate File 127 engrossed does pass the committee. Can I get volunteers to work this bill, and then we'll go back to the other for volunteers on the floor? Senator Boner. Lolly did, okay. She's co-sponsor on the bill. All right, thank you. And for Senate File 98, do we have a volunteer to work that on the floor? We do. I'll have you work in conjunction maybe with one of them, but a volunteer before you're appointed. And would you like to handle that one? Okay. And I'll make sure you have help from one of the co-sponsors as well. Thank you for that. Is there any other business to come before the committee? With that, we are adjourned.